Welcome back to another video on the channel. For this one I'm going to show you how to get the best performance out of your PC when you're playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare's Warzone mode. This is only going to work for NVIDIA graphics cards, okay? So if you've got an AMD graphics card or a Radeon graphics card, it's not going to work. But if you do have an NVIDIA, follow along. So right click on your desktop, go to NVIDIA control panel, because we're going to sort out the graphics card settings first. So the first tab is Adjust Image Settings with Preview. So we're going to change this to Use the Advanced 3D Image Settings. Then you click Apply in the corner, and then you move on. Next one is Manage 3D Settings. So this is probably going to be the longest section, but probably the most important, okay? So on your image sharpening, I tend to have it on, and I just like to sharpen by about 0.5, but you can go higher if you want to. It just sort of sharpens the edges up on your image. It's up to you. I tend to just leave it like this. So I turn it on and then put it on 0.50, and then the film grain on 0.17. But again, this is personal preference. Ambient occlusion, you want to make sure that is set to performance. And the anisotropic filtering, leave that as default on application controlled. Anti-aliasing, I turn this one off, the FXAA. Gamma correction I leave on. Anti-aliasing mode will be application controlled, so that means whatever game you're running will control whether there's anti-aliasing. Transparency off. You want to make sure all your CUDA cores of your GPU are being used, so make sure that is set to all. DSR, again, this is if you're trying to scale your resolution to what your monitor isn't producing but your game can produce. I tend to just leave it off for the best performance because it might cost you a few frames. Low latency mode, I just leave this on. I don't have it on ultra, I just leave it on, okay? I have capped my frame rate to 144, which is the refresh rate of my monitor, so you might want to put this at the refresh rate of your own monitor. Up to you. You can leave it unlimited if you want. I tend to just keep it at 144 because there's no point going any higher because that's all my monitor can support. Monitor technology, G-Sync compatible, so a lot of the modern screens now are G-Sync compatible, so I tend to have that on just because I tend to get a lot of screen tearing if I don't have this on. Multi-frame sample anti-aliasing off. Make sure if you've got more than one GPU, make sure you're selecting the one you want to use, but in most people's cases it will be correct there anyway. Power management, this is the important one. A lot of it will be set to optimal power. Great for the planet, bad for your frames. Put it on prefer maximum performance there. Preferred refresh rate, I'll just put highest available. It's fine. You can set it if you want to, but in application. But I prefer just keep on highest available. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, shader cache, you want to have that on. Texture filtering, anisotropic samples on. Texture filtering, LOD bias, leave that on. Texture filtering quality, yeah, you want this on high performance. It puts it on quality to start with, but on high performance because you want to get the most frames out of the game. Texture filtering, yeah, have that on. Tri-linear optics, yeah, fine. Threaded optimization, yeah, leave that on auto. Triple buffering off. VSync, you definitely want VSync off. Unless you haven't got a G-Sync compatible display and you're really getting bad screen tearing, I definitely want to have this VSync off. Virtual reality pre-rendered frames, that should be on 1. You probably won't even notice this. And another virtual reality setting, just leave that off because we're not playing VR. So if I go to the next setting here, you can ignore this, no need. Change resolution, again, you don't need to do this. The only thing I would check is if you just built your computer, just make sure that it's set to the correct resolution and the correct refresh rate here. Because a lot of the times I hear people say that they've bought new computers and they haven't noticed any difference in the frame rate, and it's because they haven't gone into their settings and actually changed the screen to reflect the refresh rate here, so it would have been on 60 Hz where it should have been on 144. So just to check this tab, make sure. Adjust color desktop settings. This is quite an important one that people will always forget. So this is my main monitor here, my Acer. So what you have to do is change it to use NVIDIA settings because it will probably be on this one as default. You can leave everything alone. Just go down to digital vibrance. I like to pop this up to about 70, 75%, something in that region. Well, it just makes the colours pop, adds a bit of saturation, it makes it a bit easier to spot enemies. It's not very nice for general desktop use because the image looks kind of blown out, but for games it's really good, so I tend to put that on 75 and click apply like you've been doing on every single one so far, so click apply there. Rotate display, you won't be needing this unless, of course, you want to play in portrait mode. I don't know why you'd want to do that. HDCP, not important either, you can ignore digital audio as well. For adjust desktop size and position, I just put no scaling because I'll be playing at 1440p. But if you're on a 1440p monitor and you want to play at 1080p, then you can make sure the scaling is on the GPU and you can just put it on aspect ratio. That'll be absolutely fine. On G-Sync, again, this is another option if your monitor supports it. I like to use it just because it makes sure that I don't get these screen tearing. So sometimes you'll see like a little band of like artifact in the middle of the image. This will help get rid of that. It does add a very, very small amount of input lag, but for me it's worth it to get rid of the screen tearing. Set up multiple displays. Again, you won't need this for Modern Warfare, so we'll leave that for now. If you go down to adjust video color settings, you go with the NVIDIA settings and just have a look through. Make sure your dynamic range is set to full, because it will probably be unlimited to start with, so make sure it's on full to get the best image quality. Video image settings, again, we'll put this on use NVIDIA settings, so you can play with the edge enhancement as much as you want, but for me it's kind of nice down at around 50%. That's absolutely fine. Noise reduction, again, this is another personal preference. I tend to leave it at 20%, that should be absolutely fine. Make sure you apply your settings like you always do, and click yes, and that'll be it for the NVIDIA control panel. Okay, so now we have opened up Warzone and we're just going to set a few settings to try and get the best performance. So you're just going to load up Warzone, go straight down to options, we go over to graphics, and as you can see here, my game has already set itself to full screen borderless. You're much better off than just plain old full screen, unless for some reason your monitor doesn't like it. Full screen is probably the best one. We'll leave it at this for now because it'll make my screen go black, but you do want to change this to full screen, okay, and we'll do that at the end. So here we go, we've got our display adapter correct. Again, this will only really be an option if you have more than one GPU. And as you can see here, my render resolution has reset itself, so we're going to put it back to 100. For me, I got a 2070 Super, so if I run at 1440p, I will tend to get around 144 frames per second on the settings that I'm using. But if you're using a weaker card, you might want to drop the render resolution down to like something like 50, maybe 60, 70%, something like that. 75% would be 1080p, 50% would be 720p. But on a high-end card, you can leave it at 1440p. On maybe a lower-end card, you want to lower it down. Or alternatively, just lower your display resolution to 1080p and play at 1080p. It'll all depend on how powerful your hardware is, but if you're on a lower-end card, 1080p. If you're on a higher-end card, you can get away with 1440p. If you're using a 240Hz display, you don't want to be using 1440p, you want to be using 1080p, definitely. Make sure your aspect ratio is set correctly to 16:9 wide. I've got VSync turned off, because we set that in the settings a second ago in NVIDIA, so we don't want to override what we've already done. You can set a frame rate limit if you want. I've got it unlimited because I set my frame rate limit in an NVIDIA control panel a minute ago, so there's no need to set it here as well. But you can set it if you want, it's up to you. I've got NVIDIA highlights disabled because I don't really need them. I'm recording all my gameplay on another PC, but if you want to have the highlight system there, you can enable it. It won't give you much of a performance hit. Display gamma, so if you're playing on a monitor like most of you will be, leave it on 2.2. If you're playing on a TV, just change it to 2.4. Easy. Texture resolution, I just have it on normal. I could go lower if I wanted to get a bit more performance, but normal seems to work fine for me. I got my texture filters on low, got particle quality on low, disabled bullet impacts and sprays disabled. There's a bit of a trend here. It's all towards the left hand side, okay? So I've got everything on low, 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 low. Okay, so it will affect the graphics a bit, obviously. It's going to make the graphics look a little bit worse, but you won't notice it quite so much, especially seeing as I'm playing at 1440p. If you're playing at 1080p and you're easily getting 144 frames per second, feel free to just go in and add, bump up a couple of these settings here just to your liking. It's up to you. Just try and get the most performance you can for maintaining that high refresh rate. So again, I've got all these disabled, all this on low. I've turned the anti-aliasing completely off, so the images do look a little bit jagged, but I don't mind that, it's okay. Depth of field, I have that definitely turned off because that would just annoy me. So everything will be in focus if it's disabled. If you enable it, all the things on your sides will be blurred out. I prefer it all just to be sharp. I've got motion blur turned off because that's just nauseating. It means you can't snap onto your targets as easily. If you want motion blur on, have it on. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to have it on. Again, weapon motion blur, I don't know why you'd want this on either. Definitely leave that one off. Turn the film grain all the way off to get the clearest image that you can. And that's it. That is it. All you have to do then is just apply your settings at the bottom there. Easy peasy. Just make sure you are actually in full screen mode, okay? And one final thing I forgot to mention that might be handy to you is how you get this overlay in the top left here that shows you your frame rate and everything. I'll just show you how to do that quickly. Just before that, make sure your field of view is set to something nice. I see a lot of people playing on the default FOV, which is fine, but you might find you have a better time with the higher FOV, particularly in close range, because you can see a bit further out to your sides. Up to you though, that's personal preference. But anyway, onto the overlay. So you want to go down to the telemetry section here. So the ones you definitely want enabled are the frames per second counter, because you got it there. You want your server latency, which is your ping, and you want your packet loss. So these two will show you the state of your connection. So if you've got low latency, so low ping, that's good. If you've got 0% packet loss, that's ideal. If you see that you're getting ping spikes, it'll probably show up as packet loss and help you diagnose problems with your network. So what you should do next is once you've got the FPS counter on, just start a game of the practice mode. Take a look at your FPS as you're going throughout the level and see if it's too low. Then you can go back into your graphics settings again and just change that render resolution down to a lower percentage until you get the FPS that you want, essentially. And just keep doing this until you get a steady frame rate at the maximum refresh rate of your monitor. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this has helped you. If you have any questions, just stick them down in the comments and I'll get back to you with my best effort. If you like the video, please like and subscribe, because I'm fit, you're not. Deal with it.